My mother threw my grandmother's passbook in the trash and called it worthless junk. 2 weeks later, I walked into the bank with the passbook I'd rescued from the garbage. The manager looked at the balance, went completely pale and said, "Miss Cooper, I need to call security. But not for the reason you think. Before I tell you how a dusty old passbook from 1987 destroyed my mother's perfect life and gave me the power to rewrite my entire future, drop a comment and let me know where you're listening from and what time it is for you right now. I'd love to know who's part of our community. Because what happened next proved that the people who underestimate you the most are always the ones standing closest. The morning my grandmother died, I knew my life was about to get worse before it got better. I was sitting in my tiny studio apartment in Portland, the kind of place where you can touch the stove, the bed, and the front door without taking more than 3 steps. My phone buzzed at 6:47 a.m. It was my Aunt Sophie. "Mia," she said, her voice thick with tears. "Your grandma passed away in her sleep last night." She went peacefully. I sat there on the edge of my bed staring at the cracked plaster ceiling and felt something inside me crack too. Grandma Florence was the only person in my family who ever saw me as more than a disappointment. She was the only one who didn't care that I dropped out of nursing school. The only one who didn't compare me to my perfect older sister, Vanessa, who married a dentist and lived in a house with actual stairs. My mother, Angela, called me 2 hours later. "No condolences. No, how are you holding up? Just business. The funeral is Saturday," she said. "Wear something appropriate. And Mia, don't embarrass us with your thrift store clothes. Borrow something from Vanessa if you have to." I wanted to scream. I wanted to tell her that Grandma Florence loved my thrift store clothes. She taught me how to find vintage treasures and see value where other people saw junk. But I didn't say anything. I just said, "Okay, Mom," and hung up. The funeral was exactly what I expected. Expensive, cold, and full of people who barely knew my grandmother but showed up to be seen. My mother wore black Chanel. Vanessa wore pearls. I wore a simple black dress I'd found at a consignment shop for $12, and I could feel my mother's disapproval radiating across the church pew. After the service, we gathered at my grandmother's house for the reading of the will. The house smelled like lavender and old books, exactly the way I remembered it. My grandmother's lawyer, Mr. Harrison, was a small man with kind eyes and a briefcase that looked older than me. He cleared his throat and began reading. Most of it was expected. The house went to my mother, Angela, as the oldest child. Some jewelry went to Aunt Sophie. A small amount of cash was divided between the grandchildren. Then Mr. Harrison looked directly at me. "And to my granddaughter, Mia Cooper," he read, "I leave my personal savings passbook, account number 4782 to 5519, held at First National Bank. This account was opened in 1987, and I trust Mia will understand its value." My mother laughed. Actually, I laughed out loud. "A passbook?" she said, her voice dripping with mockery. "Mother left Mia a passbook from 1987? That's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard." Vanessa giggled behind her hand. "Does it even still work? Banks don't use passbooks anymore, Mom. It's probably worthless." Mr. Harrison handed me a small blue booklet. It was worn at the edges, the pages yellowed with age. On the front, in faded gold letters, it said, "First National Bank," and had my grandmother's name written in careful cursive. I held it like it was made of glass. My mother snatched it from my hands before I could even open it. "Let me see this antique," she said, flipping through the pages. Her face twisted with disappointment. "There's barely anything written in here. A few deposits from the 80s. This is junk, Mia. Pure junk." She tossed it onto the coffee table like it was a piece of trash. "Honestly, Mother," Angela said to the air, as if my grandmother could hear her judgment from beyond the grave. "Leaving Mia something this useless is almost cruel. The girl needs real help, not sentimental garbage." I felt my face burn. I wanted to defend my grandmother. I wanted to grab the passbook and run. But I just sat there, frozen, while my mother and sister picked apart the only thing Grandma Florence thought was important enough to leave specifically to me. Aunt Sophie reached over and squeezed my hand. "Don't listen to them, honey," she whispered. "Your grandma loved you. If she left you that passbook, there's a reason." But even Aunt Sophie looked doubtful. That night, I went back to my apartment with the passbook tucked into my purse. I sat on my lumpy couch and finally opened it. The entries were sparse, like my mother said. A deposit of $200 in 1987. Another $500 in 1989. A few more scattered deposits through the 90s, none more than $1,000. The last entry was from 2003 and after that, nothing. Just blank pages. I didn't understand. Why would Grandma Florence leave me this? What was I supposed to do with an old bank account that probably had a few $100s in it, if it even still existed? I set the passbook on my nightstand and stared at it. My grandmother's handwriting was on the inside cover. A single sentence, written in blue ink that had faded to gray. For Mia. Trust the compound. Trust the compound? What did that even mean? I fell asleep that night with more questions than answers. 3 days later, my mother called me again. Mia, I need you to clean out your grandmother's attic, she said. I'm selling the house and I don't have time to deal with her hoarding. You're not doing anything important, so you can handle it. I bit my tongue so hard I tasted blood. Okay, Mom. And Mia, she added, her voice sharp. Throw out anything that's not valuable. I don't want junk cluttering up my estate sale. I spent the next weekend in Grandma Florence's attic, surrounded by boxes of old photographs, handmade quilts, and books with cracked spines. Every item told a story, but my mother didn't care about stories. He cared about price tags. As I was packing up a box of vintage costume jewelry, I found a small envelope tucked into the bottom of an old hat box. It was addressed to me in my grandmother's handwriting. My hands shook as I opened it. Inside was a letter, dated just 3 months before she died. My dearest Mia, it began. If you're reading this, I'm gone and I hope you've received the passbook. Don't let your mother convince you it's worthless. That account has been growing for over 35 years, and I never touched it because it was always meant for you. Go to the bank, my darling. Ask them to check the balance. The compound interest will surprise you. Use this gift to build the life you deserve, not the life others expect from you. You are always my favorite. Love, Grandma Florence. I read the letter 3 times. Compound interest. 35 years. I pulled out my phone and did a quick search. If my grandmother had deposited even a modest amount in 1987 and let it sit untouched, earning compound interest for decades, my heart started racing. I grabbed the passbook and ran. The next morning, I walked into First National Bank with the passbook clutched in my sweaty hand. The bank was one of those old buildings with marble floors and high ceilings that made you feel small. I approached the counter and a young teller with a bright smile greeted me. Hi, how can I help you today? I slid the passbook across the counter. I need to check the balance on this account. She picked it up and her smile faltered. Oh wow. This is really old. Let me see if our system can even find it. She typed on her computer, frowned, then looked up at me with confusion. Can you hold on for just a minute? I need to get my manager. My stomach dropped. Was the account closed? Had my grandmother made a mistake? A tall woman in a navy blazer appeared. She had sharp eyes and an air of authority that made me want to apologize for existing. Her name tag read Mrs. Franklin, branch manager. Miss Cooper, she said, extending her hand. I'm told you have a passbook account you'd like to access? Yes, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. It was my grandmother's. She passed away and left it to me. Mrs. Franklin took the passbook and examined it carefully. She opened it, read the entries, then looked at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Come with me, please, she said. She led me to a private office in the back of the bank. My hands were shaking. I felt like I was in trouble even though I hadn't done anything wrong. Mrs. Franklin sat down at her desk and typed into her computer. The seconds felt like hours. Finally, she looked up at me and her face had gone completely pale. Miss Cooper, she said slowly. I need to verify your identity before we proceed. Do you have a driver's license? I handed it over. She checked it against the passbook, made a photocopy, and then turned her computer screen toward me. This is your account balance, she said. I looked at the screen. The number didn't make sense. It had too many digits. I counted them twice. $1,847,392.18. I stopped breathing. That can't be right, I whispered. Mrs. Franklin nodded slowly. It is. Your grandmother opened this account in 1987 with an initial deposit of $10,000. Over the years she made small additional deposits, and the account earned compound interest at rates that were much higher in the 80s and 90s. She never made a single withdrawal. For over 35 years, this money has been growing completely untouched. I felt like the room was spinning. Nearly $2 million. My grandmother had left me nearly $2 million. I don't understand, I said. Why didn't she tell anyone? Mrs. Franklin smiled gently. In my experience, people like your grandmother are very intentional. She clearly wanted this to be a surprise. And based on the note in our system, she specified that only you could access this account. I started crying right there in the bank manager's office. Not sad tears. Shocked and overwhelmed, grateful tears. Mrs. Franklin handed me a box of tissues. Take your time, Miss Cooper. This is a lot to process. After I calmed down, she walked me through the next steps. I could transfer the money to a new account, invest it, withdraw it, whatever I wanted. It was mine. I left the bank in a daze, the passbook still in my hand, now with a fresh entry showing the current balance. For the first time in my life, I had options. But I didn't tell anyone. Not yet. I went home and sat on my couch, staring at the passbook. My mother's voice echoed in my head. This is junk, Mia. Pure junk. And suddenly I wasn't just grateful. I was angry. My mother had thrown this away. She had mocked it. She had called my grandmother cruel for leaving it to me. She had no idea that she'd just dismissed nearly $2 million as worthless trash. And I wasn't going to tell her. Not yet. I was going to let her keep thinking I was the broke, disappointing daughter. And then when the moment was perfect, I was going to show her exactly what worthless junk looked like. The plan came to me 3 days later while I was sitting in a coffee shop pretending to work on my laptop. My mother had always valued appearances above everything else. Her reputation in her social circle was sacred. She needed people to see her as successful, generous, and charitable. She needed to be admired. And I was going to use that against her. I opened a new document and started typing. I outlined every step, every conversation, every moment I would need to engineer. This wasn't going to be a quick, angry confrontation. This was going to be slow, deliberate, and devastating. Step 1. Let her sell Grandma's house. My mother had been bragging to everyone about the estate sale. She'd hired a high-end company to appraise and sell my grandmother's belongings. She was convinced she'd make a fortune off the furniture and antiques. I didn't stop her. I let her sell everything piece by piece, while I quietly withdrew $50,000 from my new account and put it into a separate investment fund. I wanted to be smart with this money, not reckless. Step 2. Upgrade my life but keep it hidden. I found a beautiful one-bedroom apartment in a nice part of town. It had hardwood floors, big windows, and a kitchen with actual counter space. I paid 6 months' rent upfront in cash. I bought myself a new wardrobe, nothing flashy, but clothes that fit well and made me feel like a person who mattered. But whenever my mother called, I answered from my old apartment. I kept the lease, kept the furniture, kept up the illusion that I was still struggling. Step 3. Wait for the perfect moment. That moment came 6 weeks later. My mother called me, her voice tight with fake sweetness. Mia, darling, I need a favor. I almost laughed. She never called me darling unless she wanted something. What is it, Mom? I'm hosting a charity luncheon next Saturday, she said. It's for the Women's League, very important people. I need extra help serving and I thought you could use the money. I'll pay you $100 for the day. She wanted to hire me as a servant at her fancy luncheon. She wanted me to serve her friends, to reinforce the narrative that I was the failure daughter who needed handouts. Sure, Mom, I said. I'll be there. I could hear the satisfaction in her voice. Wonderful. Wear something plain and dark. You'll be in the background. I hung up and smiled. This was it. This was the moment I'd been waiting for. The luncheon was held at an expensive country club. The kind of place with valet parking and waiters in white gloves. I showed up early wearing a simple black dress, and my mother immediately put me to work arranging flowers and setting tables. Her friends started arriving around noon. Women in designer dresses and expensive jewelry, all air-kissing and complimenting each other's Botox. My mother was in her element, holding court, talking about her recent home sale and how difficult it was to deal with her late mother's estate. It was so much work, she said, sighing dramatically. But someone had to handle it. My daughters were no help, of course. Vanessa is too busy with her children, and Mia? She trailed off, gesturing toward me as I poured water into crystal glasses. Well, Mia does her best. Her friends made sympathetic noises. Kept my face blank. Halfway through lunch, the club manager approached our table with a worried expression. "Mrs. Thompson," he said quietly to my mother. "I'm sorry to interrupt, but there's been an issue with your payment. Your credit card was declined." My mother's face went bright red. "That's impossible," she hissed. "Run it again." "We did, ma'am. 3 times. Do you have another form of payment?" The table went silent. Every woman was watching. My mother fumbled through her purse, pulled out another card and handed it over. The manager walked away. 5 minutes later he returned. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Thompson. This card was also declined." I watched my mother's perfect composure shatter. She was humiliated, caught short in front of the exact people she needed to impress. Vanessa, sitting next to her, whispered urgently, "Mom, just write a check." "I don't have my checkbook," Angela snapped. And that's when I stood up. "Excuse me," I said, my voice calm and clear. I walked over to the manager. "I'll cover the bill." My mother's eyes went wide. "Mia, don't be ridiculous. You can't afford." I pulled out a sleek black credit card, the kind you only get with serious money in the bank, and handed it to the manager. "Run this," I said. He took it, looking relieved, and disappeared. The table was staring at me. My mother looked like she'd seen a ghost. "Mia," she said slowly, "where did you get that card?" I smiled. "From my bank account, Mom. You know, the one Grandma left me. The passbook you threw away and called worthless junk." Her face went from red to white. "That account was empty." "No," I said. "It wasn't. It had $1.8 million in it. Compound interest over 35 years. Grandma knew exactly what she was doing when she left it to me." The silence at that table could have stopped traffic. Vanessa's mouth was hanging open. My mother looked like she was about to faint. "You're lying," Angela stammered. The manager returned with my card and a receipt. "Thank you, Miss Cooper. Your payment went through perfectly." I signed the receipt, added a generous tip, and tucked my card back into my wallet. Then I looked at my mother. "I'm done being your backup plan," I said. "I'm done being disappointed. Grandma saw something in me that you never could. And now I have the resources to build a life you'll never control." I picked up my purse and walked out of that country club with my head high. Behind me, I heard my mother's voice, shrill and desperate, trying to explain to her friends that it was all a misunderstanding. But it wasn't. It was justice. The fallout was immediate and spectacular. By that evening, my mother had called me 17 times. I didn't answer. Vanessa sent a furious string of texts demanding to know if I was serious about the money. I blocked her number. My Aunt Sophie, however, sent me a single message. "Your grandma would be so proud of you." That one made me cry. Over the next few weeks, I watched my mother's world slowly unravel. She'd been living on credit for years, maintaining the illusion of wealth while drowning in debt. The house sale had been supposed to save her, but she'd already spent most of that money before it even cleared. Now, with her credit cards maxed out and her reputation in tatters after the luncheon incident, she had nowhere to hide. I didn't gloat. I didn't rub it in. I just lived my life. I quit my part-time job at the grocery store. I enrolled in online classes to finish my degree, this time in something I actually cared about: financial planning. I wanted to help people like me, people who didn't grow up with money, learn how to manage it when they finally got it. I started a small investment portfolio, working with a financial advisor to make sure my grandmother's gift would last. I bought a reliable car. I donated to charities my grandmother had cared about. And every single day I looked at that old passbook sitting on my desk and felt grateful. 3 months after the luncheon, my mother finally showed up at my new apartment. I don't know how she found the address, but there she was, standing in my doorway looking smaller than I'd ever seen her. "Can I come in?" she asked, her voice quiet. I considered saying no, but I stepped aside and let her enter. She looked around at my clean, comfortable space, at my new furniture and the framed photos of Grandma Florence on the walls. "This is nice," she said. "Thank you." We stood there in awkward silence. Finally she spoke. "I was wrong about the passbook. I was wrong about a lot of things." I didn't respond. I just waited. "Your grandmother always said you were special," Angela continued, her voice cracking. "She said you had a kind heart and a strong spirit. I didn't see it. I was too busy comparing you to Vanessa, to what I thought success should look like." "Why are you here, Mom?" I asked. She looked at me with red-rimmed eyes. I'm here to apologize. And to ask if there's any way we can start over. I thought about it. I thought about all the years of being dismissed, belittled, ignored. I thought about the passbook in the trash and my mother's laughter. I don't know, I said honestly. Maybe someday. But not today. She nodded, tears streaming down her face. I understand. She turned to leave, then stopped at the door. For what it's worth, she said, your grandmother was right about you. After she left, I sat on my couch and cried. Not because I was sad, but because I was free. The passbook my mother had thrown away as worthless junk had given me more than money. It had given me proof that I was seen, valued, and loved by the one person who mattered most. Grandma Florence had trusted me with her life savings, and in doing so, she'd given me the power to rewrite my own story. I picked up the passbook and ran my fingers over the worn cover. Thank you, Grandma, I whispered. I won't waste it. And I never did. It's been 2 years since that day at the country club. 2 years since I walked out of my mother's shadow and into my own light. I finished my degree in financial planning and started a small consulting business helping people manage unexpected windfalls. Inheritance, lottery winnings, settlements, I've seen it all. And every time I sit down with a client, I think about my grandmother and that passbook. My relationship with my mother is still complicated. We talk occasionally, carefully, like two people learning a new language. Vanessa and I barely speak. She's still bitter that I got the real inheritance, even though she got the house and the jewelry. But Aunt Sophie and I have coffee every Sunday. She tells me stories about Grandma Florence, about how she saved every penny, how she believed in the power of patience and planning. She knew exactly what she was doing, Sophie told me once. She knew Angela would dismiss that passbook. She knew you'd be the one to understand its value. I still have the passbook. It sits in a frame on my office wall, right next to my grandmother's letter. It reminds me every day that value isn't always obvious, that the things people throw away might be the very things that save you. And sometimes the best revenge isn't loud or dramatic. Sometimes it's just living well, proving wrong to everyone who underestimated you, and honoring the person who believed in you when no one else did. My grandmother gave me more than money. She gave me freedom, dignity, and a future I built myself. And that passbook my mother called trash changed my life. If you've ever been underestimated by the people who were supposed to believe in you most, hit that like button. Share this story with someone who needs to hear that their worth isn't determined by other people's opinions. And subscribe for more stories about justice, revenge, and the power of patience. Because sometimes the best victories are the ones nobody sees coming. Thanks for listening.